Okay, we're still in Perek Vav. We're almost finished with that Perek. Again, Perek Vav is about Gidul v'chinuch habanim, raising and educating your children. V'inyanei teichacha, and the idea of teichacha. Teichacha is giving musar, correcting people when they're not doing the proper thing. Yes, we're up to Sif Zion, paragraph Zion. Li'olam yira adam lechiach es chaveru al davar sha'isa lo'tayv. That, all right, so again, the Gra says something, we don't necessarily follow this for reasons I'll mention, and the Gra will even mention the reasons not to follow what he tells you, but it starts off with the idea that one should be willing to give his friends musar if his friend is not doing something right. We sometimes don't want to bring up issues because it'll be uncomfortable, it'll be a little embarrassing for us, may create some tension. So the Vilna Gaon says that if you really care about somebody, you'll want him to be the best person that he could be. So a person needs to be willing to be meichiach even if you're not comfortable doing it, because he says it's a no-lose proposition. Ki im yishmalai v'yitev esmasav. If the chaver will listen to you and improve his actions, Baruch Hashem, az kol ha-mitzvah sheyas hahem al yadai v'yital sechar kamo ha'isa bi'atzmai. So this is a very important yesod. If you give somebody tochacha, as a result, they go from a bad way to a good way, all of the mitzvahs that person does because of your tochacha become your mitzvahs. You get schar. And of course, it's not only that he does; it's his children's children. Meaning, we're not able to trace the causal relationships, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu can trace them. So it might very well be that a person will get schar for millions and millions of mitzvahs that he knew nothing about, that happened years after his death, because without his teichacha, those mitzvahs would never be done. I'll come back to that. So that would be the upside of giving teichacha. If he listens to you, all of the mitzvahs that person does as a result of your teichacha become your mitzvahs. Now let me stop there. There is, he doesn't bring it, but there is a vort from the Gra, Taka, that elaborates on this a little bit. The Navi Zechariah says that one of Hashem's promises to Bnei Yisrael is, V'nasati l'cha mahalchim, I will give you pathways bein ha'imdim ha'ela, between the pillars. I'll give you a mahalech. I will give you a pathway among the pillars. What does it mean to have a pathway among the pillars? So the Vilna Gaon says a malach, an angel, is called an amud, is called a pillar. One who stands still, because although angels are higher than us, but like a piece of chess on a chessboard, they're only fixed in one level. They can't go more or less. So an angel is a stationary spiritual entity. A human being is called a mahalech. A human being can go from level to level to level. That's why they compare. That's what chess shows you, because all the pieces are static and unchangeable, but the pawn on the chessboard, which is the lowest piece, is the only one that can become a queen when it reaches the other side of the board. Nothing can become a king because there's only one king, Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? So you can never have more than one king. But a pawn can become a queen. And that's the idea, that human beings can change. They're Balei Bechira. Once we die, we lose the capacity of Bechira, so we're kind of frozen. Whatever we earned is what we're going to get. So what the Navi is saying is the following. Listen how the Gemara interprets the pasuk. I will give you the capacity to be a mahalech, to keep on growing, even when you're among the omdim, among those who stand still, meaning even after your death, you'll have the capacity to keep on growing. And that's by the Torah and the Ma'asim Tovim that you caused other people to do in your lifetime. So even after your death, your soul is elevated by that Torah and Ma'asim Tovim. That's why we say every yortzeit, we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu rejudges the mace. Now you might say, what's the idea of rejudging? When a person died, that's finished. There's no more mitzvahs, no more averos. The answer is there will be a constant rejudgment because the ripple effects have to be computed and recomputed every time. By the way, unfortunately, that not only applies to the good, that also applies to the bad. Let's imagine that chas v'shalom, a person was machalal Hashem and drove somebody away from Yiddishkeit. And as a result of his behavior, that person committed averos, etc. And that person's children continued to do it, etc., etc. In Shemayim, you're responsible for all of those averos that are done that wouldn't have been done had you not driven him away. To make it even worse, it's not only, cheshbon is even more complicated. It's not only I'm responsible for the averos that I caused, but if I could have been makarev him and I wasn't, because I didn't do anything. I just didn't do anything. Had I acted, I might have been makarev him. I become chayav for all of those averos because I could have stopped them. That's much more subtle than I drove him away. So the ripple effects of a human being can go on forever and ever, centuries, millennia. So the Gra says, by teichacha, it's exactly the same thing. If my teichacha is effective, then I get the sechar of all the mitzvos that person does because of my teichacha. So that's a very good reason to be mochiach. Again, though, let me just remind you, this is assuming you know how to give tochacha in a loving way, a supportive way. We'll come back to this. Now, what if the guy's not going to listen? So this is a difficult passage. V'yim lo yishmalai. But let's say I'm going to give a guy tochacha, and I did my part. But the guy is not going to listen. The guy is not going to listen. So then he says, Oz, notel esatov mimenu. So this is a little hard to understand, meaning, if he listens to my tochacha, I get the sechar of all of the mitzvos that he does as a result of my tochacha. If he doesn't listen, I take all the good that belongs to him. Now, what does that mean, all the good? I mean, that means he loses the mitzvahs? I mean, even if a guy did something wrong, and I should have given him tochacha, he may have other mitzvahs, right? So is the suggestion that if he doesn't listen to tochacha, he loses his other mitzvahs? That's not logical. Even a Rasha gets reward for his mitzvahs. So this is based, the Gemara brings a raya from a Gemara in Chagiga. Let's see what the Gemara says, then we'll see what he means. Al Zen Ne'amar, the Gemara in Chagiga has such a lashon like this. Zacha, when a person is zaycha, when a person merits, Naitel chelkai v'chelek chaveirei b'gan Eden. He gets not only his portion, but he gets the chelek of his friend's portion in Gan Eden. which is Olam Haba here, the Rasha takes the chelek of the other person. So really the problem is, what does that mean? There is a statement in Chazal that says, when a tzaddik is zoicha, he gets not only his chelek, but he gets the chelek chaverei. Now, what does it mean, he gets the chelek chaverei? Does that mean all of the reward that this guy would have gotten for his mitzvahs comes to me? That's not yosher. So the way you have to understand it is this, and this is really what the Gemara says. Every person, just like Pirkei Avos says, Kol Yisrael, yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. Every person, every Jew at least, of course Goyim also have a chelek if they keep the 7 mitzvahs, but it says Kol Yisrael, every Jew has a portion in olam haba. And even though that sounds great, the next line in the Mishnah is, and the following people don't, right? So it's not so complete, you can lose it. But let's use a mushal of money just to illustrate this. Every person enters the world with a bank account, which they can increase, but not really decrease. I'll explain that. So I'm going to make up a number. The number makes no sense, just a number. You're born with $1,000 in your bank account. By mitzvos, by ma'asim tovim, you can make that bank account grow bigger. But by averos, it doesn't quite work that way. It's not the pshat averos deplete the account, but it just means averos, you forfeit the account, and it's redistributed to other people. So, the concept of I can be zoicha in somebody else's olam haba does not mean I can be zoicha to the olam haba that he would have gotten because of his mitzvos. That olam haba he keeps. But I'm zoicha, the tzaddik is zoicha to the olam haba that the person could have gotten but didn't get. It gets redistributed. Now the Gra here is telling you a very big chiddush, but who is it redistributed to? Is it divided among all the righteous? Meaning the $1,000 that the Rasha is not going to get because of his rishus. So the tzaddik gets that chelek along with his chelek. So that means you divide the $1,000 among 1,000,000 tzaddikim. So the Gra says no. The Gra says, this is a chiddush really in the Gemara, that this refers to a tzaddik who tried to be mechiach the Rasha, to claim his olam haba. If the tzaddik is ineffective, that olam haba gets redistributed into the bank account of the tzaddik. Okay, so again, let's just work with the number. Let's imagine that every person is entitled to $1,000 minimum, and that can be increased by mitzvos and ma'asim tovim. Let's assume that as a result of the Rasha's rishus, either he loses his olam haba, which means his entitlement is a 0, or he's only entitled to 500, not 1,000. What happens to the deficit which is taken away from him? Whether the deficit is the full $1,000 or the deficit is $500. So the Gemara in Chagiga is Machadesh. It doesn't go away. Meaning he was born with a $1,000 claim. It doesn't go away. It gets redistributed, added to somebody else. Who is the somebody else? This is a chiddush of the Gra. This is not in the Gemara. The somebody else is the guy that tried to be mochiach the person, to bring him back al derech hatayv. So even ineffective teichacha, says the Gra, can have a tremendous benefit to the mochiach because it will give him the unused chelik of Olam Haba that the Rasha has forfeited because of his Averis. This is actually a very big chiddush in the Hezber in terms of the Gemara. The Gemara just says somewhat enigmatically, Zocha, when the tzaddik is Zocha, he gets his chelik and he gets chelik Chavera b'Gan Eden. So you would think somehow he gets the mitzvos of the Rasha. No, but he doesn't get the mitzvos. He gets the unallocated Olam Haba that the Rasha is not going to get because of his Averos. So instead of that Olam Haba disappearing, it's added to the Olam Haba of the tzaddik. And then, which tzaddik? So the Gemara's masber, the tzaddik who gives teichacha. So therefore the Gemara says, one should never be afraid to give teichacha, because it's kulo revach. Because if the guy listens to the teichacha, I get all of his mitzvahs. I mean, he gets it too, but I get a share in all of his mitzvahs. And if he doesn't listen to the teichacha, that's going to be the Gemara of Zacha, Naitel Chelkai, the Chelik Chaveri. Now, this presupposes, of course, you're giving Tochacha in the right way. If you're giving Tochacha in the wrong way, which the Gemara will say in a minute, none of this works. But if you give it in the right way, in a loving way, in a kind way, in a way that would normally be miskabel, then it's revach, whether it's a revach, whether for you, for the mochiach, whether the recipient listens, or whether the recipient does not listen. Now, similarly, the Gemara says, by Gehenim, now this is harder to understand, the Rasha is Naitel Chelkai B'Gehenim. So there's this exchange. You have every person is born, so to speak, with an entitlement to Olam Haba. And they have 2 hotel reservations. You have a reservation in Olam Haba, and you have a reservation in Gehenim. Now keep in mind, most people might in fact go to both places, meaning you go to Gehenim for a while, then you go to Olam Haba. Okay, so it's not one or the other. In fact, for many, many people, it'll be both. Gehenim, which is limited in time, followed by Olam Haba. So let's say that one is such a tzaddik that he doesn't get any Gehenim. So what happens to his room reservation? So the Gemara says the same idea. It's not that the reservation is canceled. It's just allocated to the Rishayim, who not only get the Gehenim for their Averos, but their Gehenim is added to from the Tzadikim who didn't use their reservation. Once again, what does that mean? It's divided among all the Rishayim? What is that? In other words, what does that mean? All the Rishayim get the unused Gehenim of all the Tzadikim? So the Gemara says no. Again, this is actually a chiddush in Pshat in the Gemara. It refers, once again, to the person who's not Mekabel Teichacha. That if Ruvain is properly Mochiach Shimon, and Shimon is not Mekabel Teichacha, Ruvain will get the unused Gan Eden reservations of Shimon, and Shimon's Gehenim will be intensified by the Gehenim that would have gone to the Mochiach, but because he's a tzaddik, it didn't go. Now again, the point I'm making is this. It seems to me, if I understand this correctly, because this is not so budget, this is not an exchange, meaning to say the following: whatever Gehenim the Mochiach deserves because of his Averis, he's going to get. Meaning the Gra is not learning that, oh, I'm Mochiach you, so all of my Gehenim goes to you. He means the Gehenim that I'm not going to get goes to him. The Gehenim I'm going to get, I get. And same thing with the guy the one who's getting the musar. The Olam Haba that he earned, he'll get. It's the unearned part that'll go to the other person. Okay, so, see, in other words, the point I'm making is this is not the same as a famous teaching of the Chayvas Halavavas, for which there's no makor in Chazal. And people debate this a lot. You probably heard this. It's a very famous, unusual teaching of the Chovos HaLevavos, which needs a lot of hesber. And he says, by Lashon Hara, when you say Lashon Hara about a person, there is literally an exchange of mitzvos and averos. If Ruvain says Lashon Hara about Shimon, Ruvain gets all of Shimon's averos, and Shimon gets all of Ruvain's mitzvos.
All of it?
Well, that's what it says. That's what the Chovos HaLevavos says. Now, that's a statement in the Chovos HaLevavos. There is no makar in Chazal for that. And Rav Dessler has a long, complicated explanation that it doesn't mean what it says. So Lamaisa, he says you have to reinterpret it in different ways. But whatever the Chovos HaLevavos means about exchanges, Le'anias daiti, that is not what the Gemara is talking about here. The Gemara is not talking about an exchange. The Gemara is talking about what happens to the unearned portion of Gehenim and Olam Haba. In other words, the tzaddik does not get the Olam Haba that the Rasha earned. The Rasha does not get the Gehenim of the tzaddik that the tzaddik earns by whatever few averos that he had. But it's referring to the unearned portion that was allocated at birth. Right? The tzaddik, is not going to get that Gehenim, so that Gehenim will go to the person who was not makabel the musar. You see? So this is different. This is not exactly the same as the exchange of the Chovos HaLevavos.
There's not to be Ma'aseh Kinyan for this.
Ma'aseh Kinyan, as far as I know, no. It's a spiritual cheshbon. This thing about Ma'aseh Kinyan, it goes all the way back. Can you sell your Olam Haba, right? We know, of course, that Esav sold the birthright. So they have a cute Ma'aseh. It's an old Hasidic Ma'aseh about a Yid, a poor Yid. He was a Yarei Shemayim, but he was not too smart. He was not learned. And his wife told him, go out and make some money. We need some money. We need some food in the house. So he doesn't know what to do. He walks into an inn to get a drink, get a cup of coffee or beer. And some other Yidden see him, and they see he's a bit of a simpleton. So they say, hey, Reb Yid, what are you here for? He says, well, I have a ruble, not that much money, and I'm supposed to try to buy something to make a profit with. Buy something for a ruble, sell it for 2 rubles, whatever it would be. So the people there say, they see this is a guy they can fool around with. They say, okay, I tell you what, give me because the Rebbe told them, buy the first thing that you're offered. That's the thing. So they said, the Rebbe told me to buy the first thing I'm offered. So the guy says, okay, give me the ruble, I'll sell you my Olam Haba. So he gives the ruble, and now he owns Olam Haba, but he tells the person, I have to have a star. Write it up. We have to have a kinyan. So the person writes up, it's a big joke, and he says, I hereby sell all my Olam Haba to this person for a ruble. Then they go back to drinking, and they're laughing, and it's what an idiot this is, selling Olam Haba. So the guy comes home, the guy who sold his Olam Haba, thinking it's a joke. It's a joke, he can't. He goes to his wife and says, you don't know what happened today, such an idiot in the inn, and he was told to buy something with his ruble, and I sold him my Olam Haba and I got a ruble. These guys are so stupid. So he noticed his wife was not laughing, and his wife says, I'm not going to live with a man who sold his Olam Haba. Get it back. So he said, it's a joke. It was a joke. It didn't mean anything. He says, I don't care. Get it back. Okay, so he goes back to the inn, and the Yid is still there. And he says, listen, I was fooling around, I took advantage of you. Here's the ruble, just give me back the paper. So the Yid said, I'm sorry. The Rebbe said to buy, he didn't say to sell. He said, the first thing I'm offered, I should buy. I can't do it. So he goes back to his wife, and the wife still says, get it back. So he offers the guy like 2 rubles, 3 rubles. The guy says, I'm sorry, the Rebbe said to buy and not to sell. So anyway, it turned out that he had to give the guy like 1,000 rubles, which is exactly what the guy needed to marry off his children. And the Rebbe Paskins give him 1,000 rubles. So the person who sold it and then had to pay 1,000 rubles to get it back says to the Rebbe, he says, where's the yashrus here? Where's the fairness here? Okay, I took advantage of the guy. I took a ruble. Okay. I have to pay 1,000 rubles because I took advantage? I mean, but that's interesting. So the Rebbe said, no, everything is fair. If you're willing to sell your Olam Haba as a joke, it's only worth a ruble. So you got paid the good price. But when you're willing to be Meiser Nefesh to get your Olam Haba back, it's worth 1,000 rubles. So therefore, your Olam Haba has a shavios based on how much you care about it. This is what they say with Yaakov and Esav. People say with Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov essentially bought Esav's whole share in Olam Haba for bread and beans, bread and cholent. Right? So, did Yaakov cheat Esav? The answer is no. If Esav is machshav his ruchnius, to be just equal to bread or whatever it is, that's all it's worth. It wasn't worth anything because you're not machshav it. If you're not machshav the ruchnius has no shavios. But in this paragraph of the Evan Shelaima,
why is that not Genevas Das at all?
I didn't hear you there.
Why is that not Genevas Das at all? If I know that you have something that's worth a lot and you don't know, and I'm like, I'll just give you a little bit of money for it, why is that not Genevas Das?
Well, in the case of the story there, remember, first of all, that the one who proposed the transaction was the one who sold his Olam Haba for ruble, meaning there's nothing the simple Yid did to deceive him. Genevas Das.
The kids of
Yaakov and Esav. Yeah, I hear, but the emes is, it's not really Genevas Das because in point of fact, based on Esav's attitude, it's not worth anything. Now that's Esav's attitude, meaning b'mitzios it's not worth anything. So there's no deception. I'm buying something that has a market value of zero, and I'm giving you a harvach, I'm giving you a little bit of bread, and the like. Ruchnius has a shavios based on how much you care about it. You care about it, it's infinite value. You don't care about it, doesn't count very much. Rav Schwab was the great Rav of the German community in Washington Heights. In fact, it's a very interesting family. Rav Schwab grew up in Germany, and he grew up in a religious household. In fact, all of his brothers became Rosh Yeshiva, became great people. But the hashkafa of the household was Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Torah im Derech Eretz, combining secular education and the like. It was the Torah hashkafa of Germany, which was not the same as Lithuania and Poland. Lithuania and Poland, the great yeshivas, Mir and the like, these did not believe in secular chachmas at all. Germany, which was largely reformed, but the orthodoxy in Germany was what's called Torah im Derech Eretz. And to this day, there's controversies about this issue. So Rav Schwab grew up in a Torah im Derech Eretz home, but he went to learn in the Mir Yeshiva. And that was a really very, very different world. A very, very different world. And Rav Schwab later became a Rav, and he actually wrote a kuntras. It's probably it's probably out of print now for many years, but it's called Elu Ve'elu, Elu Ve'elu, Divrei Elokim Chaim, in which he explores all the arguments to integrate secular education and Torah, and all the arguments not to integrate. And he considered them to be two positions within Klal Yisrael, each of which had validity. It's a kuntras, Elu Ve'elu. I think he wrote it in English. It was published by Feldheim, like in the 1950s or something. Maybe it's even online. Sometimes these old books get to be online. Elu Ve'elu. But when he was a young man, when he was in Mir, he was zeichet to meet the Chavetz Chaim towards the end of the Chavetz Chaim's life. And he used to recount, Rav Schwab throughout his whole life would always talk about his meeting with the Chavetz Chaim in like 1931 or 1932. The Chavetz Chaim died in 1933. So I'll tell you two stories. One story fits what we're talking about. The other is not related. I'll first tell you the not related story because it is a beautiful story as well. The Chafetz Chaim asked Rav Schwab, "Are you a Kohen?" So Rav Schwab said, "I'm not a Kohen." The Chafetz Chaim then asked him, "Was your father a Kohen?" So Rav Schwab was a little confused. If he's not a Kohen, that means his father's not a Kohen. But he said, "No, my father's not a Kohen." And then the Chafetz Chaim asks him, "Was your grandfather a Kohen?" So Rav Schwab was just a kid of like 17, and he's chayshish, maybe chas v'shalom. The Chafetz Chaim has dementia. He's not. His mind is not fully there. It can happen. But the Chafetz Chaim explained. He said, "Well, I'm a Kohen, and I'm a Kohen because my father was a Kohen, and my grandfather was a Kohen, and my great-grandfather was a Kohen. You're not a Kohen because your father was not a Kohen, and your grandfather was not a Kohen, and your great-grandfather, at least on the father's side, was not a Kohen." He says, "Why is that so?" Because 2,000 years ago, now it's more 3,000 years ago, at the time of the Chet HaEgel, when so many Jews were worshiping the golden calf, and Moshe Rabbeinu announced, "Mi Lashem Elai, who will stand up for God? Come to me." So Shevet Levi responded. Shevet Levi, Kohanim are from Shevet Levi. So my ancestors responded to God's call, and we became Kohanim and Leviim. Your ancestors did not respond to that call. So you see, the way your ancestors responded determined what you are today. So says the Chafetz Chaim, in every generation, every single day, there is a call from heaven. Mi Lashem Elai. Who will stand up for the glory of God? God, Kavyachol, is looking for people who will stand up for His glory. So the Chafetz Chaim said to Rav Schwab, be sure that you're attentive to that call, because the decisions you make today will also affect your great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Just as the Mi Lashem Elai then affected you today, what you do today is going to affect the future generations. This was the Chafetz Chaim's message to this young teenager. Now, this reminds me of another story. I want to get back to your Shrav's conversation, but that there was a great Rosh Yeshiva. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das, Rav Shlomo Hyman. Shlomo Hyman was actually the Talmud Muvak of Rav Baruch Ber Lebovich in Kamenetz. Great Talmud Chacham. My Rebbe's Rebbe, Rav Yaakov Moshe Kolevsky's Rebbe. And Rav Shlomo Hyman came to America before World War II, and he became Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das. At a time, he was already a Rosh Yeshiva in Europe, but he left. And at the time, Torah V'das was small yeshiva. There weren't that many yeshivas. There weren't that many people studying in yeshiva. So a friend of Shlomo Hyman, walked by when he was giving shiur, and he was giving shiur to 5 people. And he was excited, he was gesticulating, he was enthusiastic. And the friend said to him, I remember in Vilna, you were giving a shiur to 500 people, so I understand you get real excited. Now you're talking to 5 people. What are you getting so excited? So Shlomo Hyman said, I'm not giving a shiur to 5 people. They're going to have children and children's children, Talmidim. I'm giving a shiur to all of the future generations. They're going to come from this. Because we're building a foundation. It's not just the people in the room. Through Avas Torah, through Islavos, enthusiasm. Therefore, I'm talking. You got to see this. You have anyone that's in chinuch has to look at it in that way. It's not just the immediate people that you're talking to. Okay, you have to look at it yourself when you teach, even when you raise your own children. It's all the generations. Going back to the first point, right? All of the mitzvahs that will be done because of you are your mitzvahs. So that was the first story with the Chafetz Chaim, the story about Mila Shem Elai, are you a Kohen? The second story, this comes into the value of Eilam Haba, if you're not Nachshivit. He asked Rav Schwab another interesting question that Rav Schwab wasn't sure if the Chafetz Chaim was totally with it or not. He said, tell me, Chazal say that the man tasted like whatever food you wanted it to taste like. You wanted steak, it tasted like steak. You wanted ice cream, they didn't have ice cream in those days, but it tasted like ice cream. The Gemara in Yuma says, man could taste whatever you wanted it to taste like, except it could not taste like onions or garlic, because that would affect the milk that a nursing mother would have, and babies don't like those types of tastes, etc. So the Chafetz Chaim said, if man could taste like whatever you wanted it to taste like, what did man taste like if you weren't thinking? You're just chewing it like gum. What does man taste like when you don't have any machshava? So Rosh Schwab said, I have no idea. Chafetz Chaim said, it had no taste. Ruchnius, man is ruchnius food. Man is spiritual food. Man is not physical food. Physical food has an objective taste. Whether I think about it or not, there's objectively a taste. Ruchnius has a taste only if you think about it. If you think about it, it becomes the sweetest thing. You don't think about it, it's not going to be worth that much. And he says, how the Chafetz Chaim said, a person thinks about a Gemara, it's the sweetest honey. You don't think about it, it doesn't penetrate, it doesn't move you in that way. So that was the other machshava, going back to the idea that in Ruchnius, your machshava is all encompassing. In fact, this reminds me of yet another thought from Rabbeinu Yaina, much earlier, one of the Rishonim. There's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, Ish lefi mahalolei. A man is judged according to his praises. Ish lefi mahalolei. So what does it mean according to his praises? So machlekes Rishonim, how to just translate the pasuk. Many Rishonim translate the pasuk as the true essence of a man can be seen by what people say about him. Meaning, what do people say who know him best? What's the saying in English? No man is a hero to his valet. Meaning people who are so chashuv that you get to know them. I'm talking about in the secular world. You get to know them on the inside. Not as great as maybe what you see on the outside. What do people say who know him well, his family, whatever it is? As opposed to real tzaddikim, it's the other way around. With the real tzaddikim, the closer you get, the greater you see that they are. As great as they are when you see them from the outside, inside you see even a greater thing. Okay, that's one pshat. So, according to that pshat, ish lefi mahalolei means a person can be defined by what people who are close to him praise him for. But Rabbeinu Yaina gives a different twist, a very nice twist. Ish lefi mahalolei, a man is judged by his praises, does not mean by what other people say about him, but a man is judged by what he praises. What is he machshav? And Rabbeinu Yaina says the following. Sometimes you can have a guy who learns, who davens, who does mitzvahs. And he does it, and he does everything right, and that's good. But what he really admires is the millionaire, or the athlete, or the sports star. And Hashem looks at him. And of course he'll get reward for his mitzvahs. There's no question about that. But Hashem says, that's not really who you are. You are what you admire. You are what you emulate. You are what you consider to be your passion. So, Rabbeinu Yaina says, Sometimes you have a guy in the opposite situation, in which he doesn't learn that much. He doesn't do that much. Because maybe he's weak in his character, he can't conquer his Yetzer Hara, he doesn't have the discipline. But he loves Talmidei Chachamim. He wishes he could be like that. That's what he's machshav in life. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, Hashem takes that into account. That's a comforting thought. Meaning, even if, that doesn't excuse us. He's not telling, I don't have to learn if I admire people who learn. It doesn't excuse you. But it's a zechus that a person has, that he's machshiv Torah. Right? So Hashem says, that's what you really admire. Now I remember for many, many years, I when I was in Chutz La'aretz, so I gave a Daf Yomi Shiur, I was able to finish more than once. So, I don't want to blame people, because people are tired. It was at night. So people fall asleep during a Shiur. Okay, it happens. I would probably fall asleep if I would be listening to somebody giving a Shiur. So I don't want to be critical about anybody. But I remember one night we were giving a Shiur, and it was the day of the Super Bowl. So people are drifting off. All of a sudden somebody comes to the show, like really excited, and announces who won the Super Bowl. All of a sudden, Techiyas HaMesim. Bishlama, if they just would have remained sleeping, okay, Beseder, so at least they're not treating the Gemara worse than the Super Bowl. But Gemara, fall asleep. Super Bowl, all of a sudden, excitement, hislavus, geschmack. But that's what it is. That's what it is. I remember, I'll tell you a little cute story that happened to me when I was in maybe 5th grade. So you see, I was a little troublemaker then. The teacher asked us, our Rebbe's asked us, could you name an important American Jew? An important American Jew, not a famous American Jew. So we mentioned like famous people, Sandy Koufax, we mentioned like famous people. So the Rebbe said, I didn't say famous Jew. I said important. Who does God consider important? Why didn't you say Rav Moshe Feinstein? Why didn't you say Rav Aaron Kotler? Why is your mind oriented that importance means fame? So, I don't know, I was indignant. I thought, hey, that's a trick question. So I went over to another Rebbe at lunch, and I said, Rebbe, can I ask you a question? Can you name me an important American Jew? So the Rebbe said, Sandy Koufax, I don't know. So I went back to the first Rebbe. You see, So I got into a little trouble there. So you don't go to other teachers and whatever. But it does highlight the idea. See, I calmed down a little bit after that. But you see the idea here. The idea here is that instinctively we gravitate. All of us gravitate to kind of these secular models, and we admire them. I tell you, even in the yeshiva world, think about the most common thing. You have two guys walk into the room. One is not a famous gadol, it's a gadol and become famous, but a Talmid Chacham who spent his life learning Torah walks into the Beis Medrash. And then you have some multi-millionaire. You have, what's the guy's name? Bill Gates walks into the Beis Elon Musk walks into the Beis Medrash. Now, the Talmid Chacham walks in, we're not going to get so excited. Elon Musk walks in, or Donald Trump, or somebody. Whoa! And again, I would have the same reaction. I'm not holding myself up better, but ask me, why should I be machshav Elon Musk or Bill Gates more than this Talmid Chacham who spends yomam b'layla learning Torah? Yeah, he's not famous. He's not a Rosh Yeshiva, okay, but still, he devotes his life to learning Torah. So it shows us, Rabbeinu Yonah, going back to Rabbeinu Yonah, that what you praise, what you're machshav, is a big key to what you really are. You see? So sometimes we have to think about that. So that goes back to the idea of your olam haba is worth how you're machshav it, how you regard it, and the like. Okay. So now, the final part of the parak is very, very important, because on one hand, Sif Zion talked about the importance of Teichacha, but as I indicated, that's only if you can do it the right way. So now we conclude with what is the right way and what is the wrong way. And if you can't do it the right way, then don't do it, because you can cause a lot more damage by a bad tochacha than by not giving tochacha at all. And he says the following: Nimtsaim shnei minei mochichim. There are two types of musar givers, two types of chastisers. Echad shemochiach b'dvarim kashim u'mavazaisam, that he gives tochacha in a very harsh way, and he humiliates people. You're a shegetz, you're a rasha, you're an apikoros, you're a kaifer. So he's giving all of this teichacha. But v'yal kain, ein devarav mekubalim. His words are not going to, or miskabalim, his words are not going to be accepted. People are not going to sit around and, let someone call them idiot, rasha, stupid. Either they'll walk away, or they'll attack, or they'll just shut down. They're not going to listen. Nobody gets motivated to change by being told how bad they are. Because as I said, you either get defensive, or you get angry, or you shut down, or if you're makabel the teichacha, you become so brokenhearted that you feel there's no hope for you. I'm a failure, I'm a flop, I'm a zero. That's if you take it seriously. So you might not take it seriously, you'll resent it, or it'll break you. So either way, there's no effective teichacha in that oifen. Aval hachacham, but a truly wise person, ba b'dvarim tovim v'nichumim, comes with good words and comforting words. You build a person up. Tell a person, you have potential. You have yechilas, you have abilities. You can do good. Don't be discouraged. Don't feel that tshuva is beyond you. That builds a person up. When a person is built up, they're then able to move for positive change. Umakarvin l'tayra, kamo she'amru bi'aron. And this is what Pirkei Avos describes, was the midah of Aaron HaKohen, right? What do we say? We say, Havi mitalmidav shel Aaron. One should be a disciple of Aaron, a follower of Aaron. Oev shalom, you love shalom. Rodev shalom, you pursue opportunities to make peace. But then, Oev esabriyas, you show all of God's creatures love. Umekarvan l'Torah, and you draw them near to Torah. So what the Gaon is explaining is, these are not separate qualities. Through the Ohev esabriyas, that's how you draw people to Torah. You draw people to Torah by showing them love, not disdain. I had mentioned earlier today at the Rebbeim had a special lunch today, but I'll mention this story. It's a beautiful, beautiful story that a Rebbe connects to a Talmud by showing the Talmud that the Talmud matters. So they say a guy came to Grodno, a teenager, Rav Shimon Shkop. Rav Shimon Shkop was one of the greatest of the Rosh Yeshivas of Europe, Rav Shimon Shkop. Even today, Rav Shimon's writing so deep, complicated. And he wanted to learn in the yeshiva, but he was told he has to go to Rav Shimon first for a bechina. A bechina? Ay, ay, ay. Well, how would you feel, 15-year-old, to take a bechina from Rav Shimon Shkop? Now, it probably wasn't as hard as Rabbi Konek's bechinas, but still, what's going to be with Rav Shimon Shkop? He's going to ask me about a Ramban, a Taisus, a Ksais, a Rebbe Kiva Eger. And Rav Shimon was very deep. Rav Shimon was known for his amkus, especially. What am I going to do? Rav Shimon says, when he comes to Rav Shimon, he's really scared. He's really shaking. How could he possibly take a bechina from Rav Shimon? So Rav Shimon says, well, we have a policy in the yeshiva that no Talmud can come learn here until I ask some questions. So the Talmud is really scared. He says, okay, here are my questions. When is the last time you slept in a bed? People would travel for days, and when is the last time you had a hot meal? Those are the questions I need to know. Because I'm going to give you a bed in my house for one night. And I'm going to make breakfast for you. Supper and breakfast. And then we'll talk about your learning, we'll talk about your chavrusas, we'll talk about Yeshiva. That was Rav Shimon Shkap's bechina. He needed to know, did you eat yet? Do you have a comfortable place to sleep? So the bacher who grew up to become a Rav, a Chashav Rav, I don't remember his name, he said, he learned by Rav Shimon a few years and learned a lot of Torah, but a lot of the Torah he forgot. A lot of the Torah, he doesn't necessarily remember exactly. But the love that Rabbi Shimon showed him is something he always remembered. He never forgot that. And that gave him chizuk to steig and to grow and to accomplish whatever he accomplished. Again, he became a Talmud Chacham. So that's what the Gemara is saying. Very important. It's important that this comes from the Gemara because sometimes, it's interesting because we often think of the Gemara. I mean, obviously, even I am not old enough that I remember the Gemara. I don't. But we think of the Gemara. The image of the Gemara that we have is normally a very austere image. You think of the Gemara as very stern. Like, he probably didn't make a lot of jokes. And, he never schmoozed. He learned 22 hours a day. He only slept for 4 30-minute periods in 24 hours. He lived on bread. So you think, the Gemara was not like the smiling gadol that would tell you funny stories or whatever it would be. But you see from passages like this that the Gemara is saying you want to be makarev somebody. It has to be with kindness. It has to be with gentleness. And it has to be with comfort. The word nichumim is an important point. Because nichumim says, yeah, you messed up. But it's okay in the sense that you can fix it. Don't feel that things can't be fixed. And that's a famous saying in Yiddish from Rav Nachman of Breslov. Masha efshar l'kalkel, efshar l'taken. Anything that can be broken can also be fixed. And that's the idea. In fact, I remember this, the first time I heard this, I didn't know it was from Rav Nachman. I actually heard it from a tailor in Meir Sharim. I had a suit, and I was in Chutz La'aretz, and my son at that time had a dog, a puppy, cute puppy. So my jacket was on a chair, a low chair, and of course the puppy comes along and chews it along, so the whole bottom of the jacket was chewed up. So in America, you can't go to a tailor and say, fix it. In America, they get another jacket, get another suit. There's no concept of fixing. But when I got back to Yerushalayim, I said, well, listen, Meir Sharim probably tailors fix stuff because people are poor, they can't afford new things. But even though I was embarrassed, I thought it really was bad. I went to a tailor, I was very sheepish. I said, listen, you probably can't do anything, but just in case, can you fix this? So the tailor told me, Masha efshar l'kalkel, efshar l'taken. Anything that can be ruined can be fixed. So later I learned that was taka from Nachman of Breslov. But that's what the Gemara means with divrei nichumin, words of comfort. Words of comfort. Give a person chizuk. That's the greatest musar. Okay, musar is not to tell a person how bad he is, but to give a person hope that you can get better. This is the midah of Aaron. Now then he says, though, we got to be realistic. V'afal pichein, harishoyim einam nichnoam elo lefisha. That there is a problem in real life, and that is when people are really rishoyim, sometimes the teichacha may only have a temporary effect, meaning it's not always going to be a permanent change. Because it's like an elastic band. You stretch an elastic band, but when you let go of it, it normally goes back to its original shape. So he says, Rishayim, sometimes are so addicted and so enmeshed that even if they get influenced, it may be a temporary. In fact, this is the Chazal say this by Ninveh. Remember the book of Yonah, right? Yonah HaNavi is given. We read it on Yom Kippur. Yonah HaNavi is given the mission of giving giving musar to Ninveh, saying, "You guys better do tshuva, or in 40 days Ninveh is going to be totally destroyed." Now, remember the story? Yonah didn't want to go. Yonah tried to run away from Hashem. It's very interesting, run away from Hashem, but whatever. Why did he want to run away? Because like this, the Gemara says, because Yonah knew that the Umos HaOlam are very, they can be influenced for tshuva very quickly. Jewish people are stubborn. We're stubborn. So Nevi'im give us musar, and say, hey, get out of here, don't bother me. The Umos HaOlam get scared and they do tshuva. So Yonah was afraid that if the Umos HaOlam do tshuva and the Klal Yisrael doesn't do tshuva, it makes the Jewish people look so bad. He didn't want to give the musar to the Umos HaOlam because they're kareivim l'tshuva yoser miYisrael. That's the downside of being stubborn. Am K'shei Oref is both a positive and a negative. Am K'shei Oref is how we survived 2,000 years of galus when the whole world wants to kill us. Am K'shei Oref. It's a very good quality. We don't break. Problem is, when you have that attitude against Hashem and the Torah, then it becomes negative, but sometimes that's how it is in life. The good qualities, the very quality that's good may be bad in different contexts. Okay. The Umos HaOlam were not Am K'shei Oref, so they would bend. And Yonah was right. Ninveh did tshuva. But Chazal say the very bendability means they can change one way or the other real quickly. So they do tshuva because they're scared, and then they go back to the bad habits. The changes are not permanent. So the Gemara warns us that sometimes the Rishayim only do tshuva lefi sha'ah. Yeah, but you still try. Okay. Yeah. Now then he says, V'chein yesh shemochiach b'dvarim kashim. So, again, this whole paragraph is against what we call hardline toichacha. And the first problem with the hardline toichacha is you crush a person's spirit and he doesn't feel hope. The second problem, now he's going to identify a second problem. The second problem is you don't give him a practical way to improve himself. You say, bad. Well, what are you telling me to do? That's the other problem. You're not giving any eitzah. Yesh shemochiach b'dvarim kashim. There are people who give teichacha with harsh words, ve'einu omer eich l'sakin ha'me'ufas. And nothing is offered to fix it. A chacham. So there are two ideas in good teichacha. It's loving, it's gentle, it's encouraging. But number two, it's also practical. See, this is another nakuda. Meaning, you don't just point out what's wrong, you point out practical things that can be done. And that's the other aspect of the teichacha. In fact, the word teichacha, really, think about the word teichacha. The shirish is hochiach. In fact, that's the verb in there, hochiach. Now, lahochiach is used in the Gemara and Rishonim to prove something, to show something, to demonstrate something. Right? If I say I want to be mochiach this yesod, that doesn't mean I want to give musar to the yesod. It means I want to establish it. So tochacha literally means to demonstrate to a person what they need to do. So if the tochacha is not connected to practical eitzos, it is defective. A chacham mayra derech eich l'sakein. A chacham shows the way to be misakein, ulerapais chayli hanefesh, to heal the sickness of the soul. And he brings a pasuk in Mishnah, v'zeh shekasav yesh baita k'mat karas cheref. There are some people, baita, they say words, which are as harmful as the piercings of a sword, meaning you hit a guy, you stab a guy over and over and over and over again by saying how bad he is. But Lashon Chachamim, but the words of the wise who give Teichacha marpeh are not about stabbing, they are about healing. So the Gra is interpreting that to mean that the Teichacha should be a refuas hanefesh. It should not be continually stabbing the guy and kicking the guy and the like. Okay, so this is the end of Perek Vav, so we'll stop here. Have a good Shabbos, a good week.